Hello and welcome to After Bell Rings, a podcast about high school students' perspectives on the current status quo. We're your hosts,
Rishi,
Shritan.
Rashid.
Sadly, Arshan's currently out of town, so he'll be back for the next episode.
Here we will be uploading episodes every 1 to 2 weeks, and each episode will be about a different topic that is interesting to us. We hope to create a rich community revolving around the changing world and the outlook of high school students within it. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button if you're enjoying our content.
Today's episode will be discussing whether filmmakers should use more CGI or shift to practical effects. So let's get started.
Okay, I think the first thing that we should really talk about is why are we discussing this issue?
Yeah. So I think the main reason is, the main reason why we should even be thinking about this, right? Is that movies are, they've been widespread ever since color films came to fruition. So they're becoming more prominent because of streaming platforms, right? Like before you would have to go to the theater with your family and get tickets, but now you can just, sit at home on your couch with popcorn or whatever and just watch whatever new movies are coming out, like Hulu, Disney Plus, Netflix, all that kind of stuff.
I think it's that, and also as we technologically advance through the years, we're getting more and more adept at creating illusions and that type of thing. And right now in modern society, movies and cinema has been more prevalent in our lives more than ever before, right? So things like graphics have become so advanced, and then CGI is telling their stories and things like that. And then the MCU in particular, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is one of the biggest culprits for this. Especially in that one movie, Avengers Endgame. That last scene was so CGI heavy, right? Yeah, it's not even just with that movie; it's in a lot of superhero films.
And that's not to say it's bad in any sense. Well, for certain movies, it's bad. It's kind of in certain cuts or shots, you can kind of tell when it's CGI versus when it's practical effects. But I think the biggest issue is that movies are increasingly using CGI. They're opting for CGI to the max level instead of practical effects.
And then the reason we even want good CGI is that as we advance in technology, we want good CGI because the entertainment we're watching, we want it to be realistic looking. We don't want something that if it's bad CGI, it even shows how professional the studio can be. If it's scuffed, people will immediately realize that, oh, this is not as big or not as interesting because the CGI is scuffed or just the visuals are very bad.
I think the main reason that CGI is really more commonplace right now is because of the fact that as we continue to go into the modern era and technology advancing, like I said before, right, our imagination advances with it, right? So in order to do things that aren't as practical in real life, CGI can offer that to us.
Yeah,
a lot of the audience has really liked it a lot, and now it's just becoming more and more commonplace.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we as audience, we're purely watching these movies and shows for entertainment. And if we're watching these for entertainment, we want that entertainment to be high quality entertainment. We don't want we want it to be realistic so that it immerses us. If it's not realistic, or if we can see that there's some parts where it's iffy, we're not going to be as immersed in the whatever we're watching.
Yeah, and I think a good example of that is James Cameron's Avatar, right? I remember when that first released, that was a huge thing because of how well the CGI looked, and for its time, of course, right? Even looking back on it now, it's one of the best CGI films out there in terms of how the actual CGI looks.
Yeah, definitely. The whole the tall aliens and the different those pterodactyls or whatever they ride on.
Yeah, but I think it's on a trend though, because after that came out, that's when CGI, people started to see where the benefits of CGI were.
Yeah, bro, that really hit it off.
After that, there was a huge outburst of CGI movies. Before then, CGI is in you can call it an infancy almost. It wasn't that developed. But I think aside from how CGI is becoming more prevalent, even then, there's still a lot of films that come out that kind of they go against that prerogative. So, um, for example, Jackie Chan films, right? Yeah, obviously he does martial arts type films, so they're going to be more practical than CGI, anyways. But usually he goes for like martial arts plus comedy type movies, and they do really well. And then another one is like Tom Cruise, but he takes it to the extreme. He's what you would call like a method actor, where basically he does everything he can to be the person he's acting as. So for Tom Cruise, he'd be acting as Ethan Hunt and Mission Impossible, so he'd be actually doing all the stunts on his own.
I think I think the importance of that is that like it's especially in like now, because there's a lot of people in like the Hollywood industry or any other industry, like in the cinema industry in general, they don't do a lot of their own stunts. Like,
yeah, exactly.
A lot of them use like either stunt doubles or CGI, right? But the fact that they can do all those things that CGI like has to offer, that's what makes them more valuable as like an actor, And in some ways, I think that makes practical techniques and realism like a lot more interesting and impressive,
Yeah, I mean, I think that raises like the really big question that that culminates all of what we're going to be talking about in this episode is, what do you think is better for the film industry then, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have these two types of these two different approaches to movie making. You have a CGI heavy, you have practical heavy, and you have some that are kind of a mix, right?
Yeah.
So what do you guys think? What is more beneficial for the film industry, in your opinion?
I think.
Well, it is not as clear as a yes or no answer. It's like we cannot simply say, "Oh, CGI is better" or "practical is better." We need to look at it in depth.
Okay.
Yeah. So how about we look at first? Let's look at like what CGI specifically has to offer.
Yeah.
So I think honestly, CGI can like a lot of the practical movies, right? If you're expecting to do like a whole stunt, right, and then you have to do like all this like settings and backgrounds and all the work for that, right? A lot of construction, things like that. That can be pretty expensive. But with CGI, I feel like you can just do it like on a computer. Like, for instance, in Endgame, right? I remember seeing a B-roll or behind the scenes clip. And that whole scene, that end of the scene where it's like a final big battle and everything, that whole scene was like on this like dreaded battlefield, like near the Avengers base, right?
Yeah.
But in the behind the scenes shot, like it was just them on concrete and green screens.
Yeah, I mean, you're technically right. It can be done on a computer, but and obviously, that with that comes the benefit of having like a much smaller team, right? You don't need to have different practical effects specialists, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that also brings up a problem with CGI that we'll get into later. But you're right. You can technically do it on a computer, but obviously those computers have to be very powerful, right? Especially with new movies that are coming out now, like you said, Avengers Endgame, which is about like
true.
It was like a couple of years ago. But because there's so many effects going on, obviously it takes time and expensive equipment.
Speaking of expenses, right? CGI is like much more of a convenient option, because if you look at Top Gun and Tom Cruise's Top Gun Maverick, they actually used real fighter jets for those scenes. They now if they just, instead of using actual fighter jets and filming like actually flying in the air, if they just put like a miniature like model cockpit and just use CGI on that, it would have been obviously less expensive, but it wouldn't have produced the same immersive experience as the actually using fighter jets. So like it has its downsides, because like obviously it looks more realistic and the audience is much more immersed, but the studio had to spend a lot of money because they had to literally use fighter jets.
But then also, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay, so I was just saying, like, basically, I mean, Yes, that's true. And I mean, Top Gun Maverick is also like a really obvious example because it's fighter jets, right? So you have to see how the G-force actually affects the actors.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to do their own training, of course, to get ready for like flying in those planes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think even now CGI is reaching like photorealistic like levels because, for example, if we talk about maybe like the Lion King, right? Like you remember the remake that they did, which was like live action.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
really it looked super realistic. Although you could tell it was animation, it looked pretty real and detailed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're basically labeled as live action despite like using a heavy load of CGI. But in those movies, it's almost seen as like a different way of storytelling, and I think that's kind of the beauty of CGI. I think it's its main selling point is it's this like treasure chest of just unlimited creativity. Like you can do whatever you want with it, basically, as long as you have the imagination for it. So it's basically an art form in some aspects. And adding to that, because of the creativity, you can kind of bypass anything that's too difficult to do. That's normally practically done. So
I agree with that because like with the power of CGI itself, like like the movie industry brought like an insanely popular classic, like The Lion King, The Jungle Book. I think also Aladdin too, because there was
yeah,
CGI for Will Smith, right?
yep,
And they brought insanely popular classics like in the 1900s, right? But they brought it back to life and they brought the audience back on that ride again. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, exactly.
Like if you wanted to do The Lion King, for instance, if it was just doing a practical like method, you can't really get lions, right? To
Yeah,
like talk or move their mouths or whatever. But with CGI, that was possible, right? And then yeah, that's what makes it about. Like you can do a lot more things that you couldn't even imagine to do with
I
practical
like,
effects.
yeah, I like how you mentioned about how like how it would look because um some of the original like Jurassic Park movies use practicals, not CGI, for uh um their dinosaurs, and same for Lion King, right? They use CGI, but if they used like a practical like animatronic or like some kind of like lion looking figure that they created, it would like the movements of the lion would look clunky. Like think about it, right? If you're trying to create a human, or some kind of like a thing look similar to the size of a human, if you use CGI, you could mimic its muscle movements and everything uh,
Mm-hmm.
pretty well. I mean, it might not look as realistic, but the movements of the animation will look pretty fluid. But if you were to use a like a practical, like some kind of animatronic, it would look clunky. It would look robotic, and all the movements, like even if it was like a robot lion, or it like let's say you attach like the limbs to ropes and stuff, it wouldn't be as fluid. Like if the lion was running, the running wouldn't be as smooth. It would just
yeah,
look robotic and clunky.
yeah,
I think
true.
that also ties back into the cost argument we were talking about. Like even for animatronics, like stuff like that. I think I would feel like they would cost a pretty good amount, right?
Yeah.
With the
Well,
computer and with like the databases and like software and platforms, I feel like that's more of like a one-time payment.
yeah.
Unless there's like upgrades and stuff like that, but that's not too often. But
And
if
the
it's
details, yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, but if it's like every movie, you're gonna have to create different animatronics, different props. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. On a side note, though, you guys said a lot about the Lion King, and
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, we obviously have the original and the remake. What do you think is better? Which one do you think is better?
Oh, obviously the original. That's the nostalgia.
Yeah, I mean, I
Not
got the
even a
nostalgia
question.
for it, but the remake has "This Is the American Man" in it. So I mean, I got to go with the remake.
Okay,
It's
The
got
thing
Donald
but
is,
Glover.
like,
I can't help it. I'm sorry.
okay, but like
He's
the
really good.
problem with the remake is that I couldn't tell which line was which until they started speaking. I couldn't tell which one was Scar, which one was Mufasa. I couldn't tell
You
which
couldn't
one was
tell which
which.
one is Scar. He has a
Okay. I
scar.
could tell. Okay, not Scar. I could tell which one is Scar, but Mufasa
no,
and all
no,
the other lines look the same.
I understand what he's saying because I think the workers or like the developers of the CGI they made the lions look a little too real, and I think
Yeah, like
a lot of people didn't like that because in the original movie they had like so much expression on their faces and emotion.
They look, each of them look different, or at least like,
they had their own distinct features and things like that, right?
Yeah. But the funny thing is though, like only the female lions look the same in the original. Like I don't know if you realize they all look obviously that's true in reality as well, but like, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's probably to like save time as well, because you know it's really hard to model like all the like 50 different lions in different ways.
Yeah.
It's just better to like have like one stock lion and then like all the main characters in different models. But yeah.
Yeah, while it did look realistic, you couldn't tell the characters apart until they started speaking.
It's telling the characters apart, and it's like the lack of expression. Like that's the one thing I didn't really like about the remake, is that you couldn't really feel the energy of the movie.
Yeah, because like with the original, it was like it's almost like they were human in a way, right? Because the expressions were almost like a human's face. But in the remake, it was more animalistic. Like it was more like an animal, so you couldn't really relate with it. But fair point.
Yeah. So what about practical effects? What do you think?
Well, I mean, they cover practical effects is pretty widely based, just like CGI is. So, for example, like it covers say prosthetics, right? Or Varshan said this earlier, but animatronics. What else? Pyrotechnics, right? That's what fire, with stuff dealing with fire. And so that's a lot of stuff to cover with practical effects, and it also deals with props as well. But I think, for example, if you're dealing with weapons, scenes that use props are real, practical, you know, something that you can feel, something that's tangible. Those are they're generally more believable, right? Because the actor has something to act off of, right? I'm not sure if you've seen the like behind the scenes for some of the Avengers or like Marvel movies, where for example.
I was looking at the behind the scenes. Thanos was a tennis ball.
Yeah. So they have like they just have like, for example, for Hulk, right? They have like Hulk's head like attached to Mark Ruffalo, or like just you know, when actors trying to interact with Hulk. It looks really goofy. You guys should check it out on a side note. It looks really goofy. But it just makes it so much harder to act, you know, with a tennis ball, right? Like, would you rather act with the tennis ball, or would you rather act with the real character? You know,
so going back into animatronics, obviously they have clunky movements, but like they're also very detailed, right? That's the one good thing about practical. Like, no matter how much effort a CGI artist puts into his work, it will never be as detailed as an animatronic. I was watching this YouTube video a while back. It talked about how in Spider-Man 2, Doc Ock's arms, they weren't CGI, they were real. Like you could see every single detail. Like you could see each piston moving, or like not piston, each little part, like each little screw attached to each little part moving perfectly, because it's a real thing. So no matter how much effort you put in, a CGI artist won't be able to replicate each little mechanism, each little bolt, each little, like even the smallest things. Like if they can, that's like props to them. But like it would be like almost impossible, because it would take insanely long to incorporate that much detail.
Well, Varsha, you could also argue, like you were talking about, that it's like more believable, more realistic in like practical effects, right? But then you're talking about how Dr. Ox, Octopus, whatever, I don't know. Okay, whatever. I haven't watched any of the other old Spider-Man movies, don't judge me. But basically,
I am actively
how his individual like moving arms has every single like lever or whatever, like a piston or whatever. But you can also argue like the first Iron Man movie, I think it was pretty, like for like especially the suit up moments, those are pretty CGI.
Yeah, true.
So and they show like a lot of details, like a lot.
I mean, usually with the Iron Man suit, like they have like a chest piece, but then the rest is like, you know, they have like the middle pieces, but the rest is CGI.
But like the arms, or like even the parts that put on the suit, bro. Like those are CGI, and that itself feels pretty practical, if not enough of practicalness. You know what I'm saying?
The suit itself was practical in the first Iron Man movie. Like that's why you feel the weight. Like when in the fight scene between the tanks and the Iron Man, you could feel the weight of the suit. You don't feel like in Avengers Infinity War, that suit was all CGI. It was a nanotech, so it was all CGI. In no way, you cannot convince me that the Avengers Infinity War nanotech suit looks realistic compared to the first one. The first one, because they had practicals, the entire suit itself was practical in the first Iron Man. So it was 100 times more realistic than Avengers Infinity War. And Avengers Infinity War, you could not feel the weight of the suit.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, I think I was. Well, I get what you're saying, right? But I think I was referring to the suit up scenes, like when
he's talking about just when Iron Man like has all his parts, like just attach onto him and they form a suit, and like in the first movie. But I think like the main problem with using the Doc Ock example, sorry, is because it's a little bit older than some of the new films that are coming out. So off the top of my head, you guys remember like the Michael Bay Transformer movies, like the ones where like they're known for being a CGI fest, and I'm just gonna admit that straight up. Basically, what they did was like they had a model. For example, if they have like a model of Optimus Prime, right? What they would do is to add all the little details and like moving parts, they just stuff it all into the model, and then have that animate out like automatically, kind of animate to make the character. But I think that also like you can tell like that there's so much detail and attention going into the model, but at the same time you can tell that the movie's just a CGI fest, right? Like you're just there to see Prime and explosions, and that's it. But yeah, I think practical effects for things like that, maybe it could be done, but honestly, I don't see it happening. Doc Ock example is a really good example of like attention to detail and making something look realistic without having to like CGI animate anything. But yeah.
And Rishi was mentioning about how CGI saves a lot of expenses, but sometimes it's also the other way around. Like in No Way Home, when Tom Holland was just walking through New York, that was all blue screen. That was a waste of CGI. Instead of him making him walk through, making him in blue screen, you can just make him walk in New York.
Yeah, I think that's where CGI falls short. It's just like there's no point in using CGI in some scenes, but they still use them. Like I really don't get it.
There's a scene in recent Marvel movies. There were like actually a couple of scenes, like Flash in a party, and in Black Widow there was a bar scene. All of those were CGI. If you want a bar scene, just go in a bar and record. That's like that would be a lot easier than making a blue screen and CGIing the entire environment.
Yeah, I agree. I actually agree with that. There's this one movie. There's this one Jackie Chan movie, and that guy who voiced Lightning McQueen in Cars. I don't know what it was called. It was like Shanghai something.
Shanghai Noon.
Shanghai Noon, yeah.
That movie's great. Yeah, that movie's great.
Yeah, that's a great movie. I
laughed all the time when I watched that movie. But yeah.
Yeah. But basically, there was this one scene. They were supposed to be riding horses, right? But they were just riding like something that bobbed up and down, and then there was a car moving forward. You know what I'm saying? Like there was a car, and there was an attachment of like the torso of a horse, right?
Ride
like
a horse.
Prop. Yeah, it wasn't even a real horse. It was just an attachment that was bobbing up and down to make it look like they were riding horses when they couldn't actually get.
It's like why, real horses? Is it like is it that hard to get a horse? I don't understand.
And the weird thing is, it's a Jackie Chan movie.
Yeah, and he does. He's one of those people that does it. He actually does it.
Yeah, he actually does. He actually does the stunts. But I think that's also the thing, like the transition into Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
Like if it was in China or in Hong Kong, for example, I remember him saying like he does everything. Like there's no computer graphics, nothing. But the transition into Hollywood, like a lot of these directors were prefer to use props. Stuff like that rather than the real thing. So.
Yeah. That's a fair point.
I feel like that's when CGI does fall short. When there's like, you could just ride a horse. Like, what's the point of doing all that instead of just riding a horse? And if the actors are not like okay with it, just use a stunt double.
Yeah. But I think like we forgot like there's like a huge downside of CGI. Not just for the people who are making the movies, or not for the people who are like directing the movies, right? Or for the people that are watching the movies, but also for the people who are making the movies. So, for example, let me think of the best way to explain this. So the way that like CGI, firms work, right? And the way that it's been structured in modern society is they do like bids. They propose a bid for like their work to a director or filmmaker. And they try to outbid their like competitors or other CGI firms by lowering their cost. So like that, even if they're understaffed. So some of y'all might not relate to this, but so for example, I think the biggest example off the top of my head is like Mappa Studios. They do these. They create anime. Yeah, they're criminally.
Anime CGI had to be on here, bro.
Yeah, they're criminally known for being understaffed at all times. Their staff is like mistreated at all times. Because they take like 30 projects, even though they know that they can't handle it all at once with other staff like being laid off or the staff just quitting outright.
Yeah, they don't get sleep, bro.
Yeah,
they don't sleep.
Yeah, I saw this video of the like Mappa director, and he had like huge bags under his eyes, but he doesn't even do any of the animating, which is a funny thing. But I think that's precisely the reason why it's expensive, is because it's because there's less labor for CGI and there's less resources for it because they're being understaffed basically.
And there's a recent example as well. Like Marvel recently has been taking up way too many projects than they can handle, and it's showing. Like recently, Thor, Multiverse of Madness, Black Widow, they all look horrible, right? Like compared to old Marvel movies were like actually baller. Like they looked amazing. They looked amazing. Now, like if I like, it's gotten to the point where I'm not even looking for CGI mistakes. I'm just watching the movie normally, and I spot it.
Like spot it.
Yeah, I'm not even looking for a CGI mistake. I'm just like, even when I'm watching the movie for the first time, I'm just paying attention to the story. And I spot a CGI mistake, that's just like bad if you're not even looking for a mistake and you see it.
Yeah,
it's not even the CGI mistakes. The overall quality has just gone down. Like remember that first scene in Multiverse of Madness? I don't know if our viewers have watched it. If you haven't, don't.
Spoiler. Yeah, spoiler.
I don't guess that you should go watch it.
But basically, what I'm trying to say is, remember that first scene, that octopus thing or whatever it was. It looks so out of place. Like
also, there's also the eye on his head for Doctor Strange.
Yeah,
he has like a third eye.
Head. I don't know. It's just so much value. Like there's shadows when there's not supposed to be shadows.
Yeah, it's weird, man.
Right, and then it's just like compared to Endgame, right, and Infinity War, like those really set they set the standard.
Okay, well, Endgame had a huge budget, so let's not compare it to Endgame. But like,
yeah, okay.
But I mean,
Marvel movies in the past had set the standard.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. Yeah.
Right, but I don't know right now, but they just.
And Marvel movies in the past also used a lot more practicals than right now. They're just overusing CGI.
I mean, we keep trashing on Marvel a lot in this, like so far at least. But like, I want to touch on like what do you think are some other, I don't know, examples of where CGI just kind of it blew it blew the expectation, or it completely missed what it was trying to do in a movie that is a Marvel.
Oh, well, I'm still gonna go into superheroes because that's where CGI is most used.
Okay.
But yeah, in
what are you talking about?
In Justice League.
I know, I knew it. I knew that's what you were gonna say.
Bro went to the exact opposite of Marvel. He went to DC. Of course he did.
Superman's upper lip was CGI'd, and it became such a big
upper lip.
meme.
Wait, what?
Yes. Superman's upper lip was CGI, and it became such a big.
Wait,
meme.
why?
I don't.
Does he not have an upper lip? I'm confused.
No,
I don't actually remember.
I
recommend you watch a clip. I recommend you watch a clip because they CGI the upper lip, and it's like beyond terrible.
Wait, does it just not have like a mouth? I don't get what. But why?
I don't know.
I think I would guess like maybe he had like some lesion or something on his upper lip or something. Yeah, and they just had to CGI it off without even like. I would suggest just do makeup, but I don't know why they CGI'd it now.
Yeah, why would you not do makeup? Oh my god!
Now it's a meme. Now it looks terrible.
Hey, that's a good thing about CGI though. It's got all the meme culture. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
Like we got Morbius, we got Minions. You know, we got
all the Morbius.
Minions is CGI. Yeah. Okay, I didn't watch Minions, so don't spoil it for me. But I know like everyone was, memeing on the movie. They were like going to the theater in suits, which is crazy to me. I would love to do that. We should do that. I don't think
that's
it's
the
showing
thing.
more.
That's the thing. Even if the CGI, right, isn't good,
Yeah.
it's still entertaining to viewers because of how bad it is.
Yeah.
Right. If it
True.
was just top notch CGI, there's only a limit to how much we can like make fun of it and heckle it a lot, right? And a lot of people like to do that. So I guess.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, like in some cases, CGI it's a really good tool to like, it's something you can recognize immediately, right? Like the T-Rex in Jurassic Park and World, you could recognize that. Minions, you know what a minion is when you see it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Superman with no upper lip. I mean, up to you. You can decide if that's good or not. But I mean, I think like at the end of the day, it's just like a tool, and if you don't use a tool right, then the result's it's not gonna work out, right? So.
Yeah.
Hey guys, post editing straight in here. Just want to let you know that during recording, the episode ran about an hour long. So what we've done is we've decided to shorten it into two 30-minute episodes, episode 10 and 11. And you can expect them to come out about a week or two apart. Episode 11 will be essentially a continuation of episode 10, and it'll be about the same topic. So yeah, we hope you enjoy, and until next time, peace.